right, so it is time for Free Speech Fridays, where we get together and can you get Isabella to get me that list, please? And we get together and we talk about the events of the week with two free-speaking New Zealanders. Today we have our good mate Chris Lynch from Chris Lynch Media in Christchurch. How are you, buddy?
Good morning, Sean. Very well, thank you.
All right, and I hope the more clean-mouthed Stuart Nash.
Bloody hell, mate! You talk about free speech and freedom of speech.
You can't. I can't tell you to stop swearing. You start with bloody hell, Stuart. I just want you to clean your act up.
You sound like my mother. But yes,
okay.
No, I will.
All right, we have standards here at the platform.
I will keep my speech. I'll keep my speech as if I'm speaking to a bunch of school kids. So
middle
no,
New
no
Zealanders.
More mouth, I promise you.
Oh.
Well, middle New Zealanders don't necessarily always.
Okay.
Leave it. But anyway, I hear what you're saying.
Oh, good on you. Good on you. Okay, let's see if you can make it through without dropping an F-bomb or something. All right. I want to start with what we've just talked about because it is the issue of the day. The Suter Art Gallery has now pulled from public view this installation artwork by Diane Prince that invited people to walk on the New Zealand flag, which was lying on the floor. There was a woman in Nelson who since Monday has been going every day picking up that flag and hanging it on another piece of the exhibition. That has so scared the Suter Art Gallery that they have now withdrawn the exhibition from public display. There was going to be a protest there at midday today. There's art and there's political agitation and sometimes there's a mix of the two. Chris, where are you on an art exhibition that invites people to tread on the New Zealand flag?
Oh, I think it's offensive. I couldn't actually believe what I was seeing. Make no mistake, this is all about pushing, the anti-Western ideology under the banner of, decolonisation, and it's ensuring everything aligns with the anti-colonial narrative. The problem with it hasn't worked out for them, though, has it? Because we have that lovely Māori lady who every day would try and put the flag back up again.
Yeah.
And so that really didn't go with the mainstream narrative that would have been more comfortable if it was a white man doing it, you see. So it hasn't, it's just sort of been under the radar in the media because of that, really. But make no mistake, the New Zealand flag stands for sacrifice and, unity and identity. It's draped over coffins on our fallen soldiers. It's waved during moments of national pride, and to throw it on the floor and invite people to walk over it, that's not bold or thought-provoking. It's just sick, frankly. And, if this was the Māori flag, there would be huckers on front lawns and outrage on front papers and endless debate panels. But because it's the national flag that represents us all, it gets treated like a doormat from public taxpayer-funded money, might I add, as well.
Yeah. Do you share that outrage, Stuart?
100%. I get the fact that art is sometimes supposed to challenge people's, thoughts and prejudices, but I thought this absolutely crossed the line. This was no grey area. It was outright offensive. And to that wonderful Māori lady who did pick it up every day, good on her. That this crossed the line as far as I was concerned. Agree with everything Chris has just said.
Yeah, her name's Ruth Tipu, and boy, I've just had 20 minutes with her. What a New Zealander. And she kind of gives the lie, guys. I think we live in a polarised world, and I think a lot of otherwise moderate New Zealanders think that all Māori are riding the gravy train and getting millions of dollars from the government and playing the victim. And then I talk to someone like Ruth Tipu, who's a solo mum, who I imagine has a pretty tough life down in Nelson. And she's not. She says, I'm a New Zealander and a Māori, and it seemed to be in that order, Stuart.
Well, Te Pāti Māori don't represent the vast majority of Māori if you actually just take voting as a representation of where people stand. We're all Kiwis, right? And there are fringes on both sides and every side. And as mentioned, art is supposed to challenge. But, if someone had put a swastika up, for example, that is deemed by society as something that is way too offensive, and we just don't want to see this sort of stuff. I get a little frustrated and exacerbated by all this, and I suspect a lot of Māoridom do, and Ruth is one of these, who believe the prejudices that actually the Māori Party, I think, that their actions actually embed and bake in a whole lot of people. I don't think maybe I'm wrong on this one. I'll be interested in your views, But I don't think that Te Pāti Māori are actually doing Maoridom any favours at all. They are catering to a fringe that is getting a hell of a lot more airtime than their position in society or their numbers in society. And I think people like Ruth, the vast majority, go, that is not who we are.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
we love
interesting,
this country. We want to get on. We've got a whole lot of good mates.
I asked Ruth, who's been doing this protest since Monday, if any other media had contacted her. Nelson Mail came along and had a quick chat to her and had to publish the fact that she was a member of Destiny Church when they talked about her protest. Now, meantime, in the media this week, we've had Lord going on about the Treaty of Waitangi at the New Zealand Music Awards. Miharangi Forbes interviewed Diane Prince, the artist who did the flag exhibition.
Of course,
it would seem to me that our mainstream media, Chris, are simply not interested in representing middle-of-the-road Māori. They are almost invested in the idea of promoting a revolution.
Of course they are. And RNZ, I know we're going to talk about their ratings later, but of course there are. And that's really sad to hear that RNZ continues to position itself as the activist voice for the Māori Party and the Green Party. But as you say, Stuart was saying, the Māori Party has become increasingly positioned itself as this activism organisation rather than everyday representation. They do themselves no favours. They do them Māori no favours. And while their passion is undeniable, I think most New Zealanders feel their focus has shifted too far into this performative and protest movement rather than offering, I can't think of a time where they've offered pragmatic solutions that actually unite people rather than divide. But I think they're quite thick. They think if they divide people and they whip up this frenzy, they're doing themselves and their people a favour, but they're not. And, it sounds a bit patsy, but I still firmly believe politics should be about bringing people together, not amplifying grievances for attention. This is all the Māori Party's done, and I think it's rank and wrong.
All right, and I'm sure...
Chris, can I just comment on that? I completely agree. Like the media has polarising, politics has as well. I mean, Te Pāti Māori, when it was formed, was very much like the Greens. They believed they could do the best for their people by working within the system, and they did, and they worked with the key government. They got a lot through. This bunch will never get anything through. The Greens were the same. The Greens, when they were formed by Jeanette and Rod, They were environmentalists who thought they could achieve more by working within the system, and they were true environmentalists. When James Shaw left, the Greens lost environmental cred and have now become a politically or socially radical party. They've lost their kaupapa, so to speak, and I just don't think they do their members any good. And it's actually not that good for New Zealand politics because we just get more and more radical.
All right. Look, guys, we might just sort of break the format I gave you because things have developed. I also uncovered yesterday, someone sent me a new fund being set up by MB. A fund of $10 million that is designed to streamline investment in what MB calls Māori-facing businesses. Now, someone else has told me that's a bureaucratic way of saying iwi corporations. It's called the Hiara Whakakahihiko Capability Fund. It replaces some funding that the Callaghan Institute used to do. And I can't for the life of me not think this is Māorification and it's apartheid funding. I thought Luxon was going to get rid of this stuff, Stuart. How can it still be happening?
Well, Nicola controls this, so she has taken over the vast majority of MB in the economic development side of things. And I was also a Minister of Economic Development. I would have to take a look at this before I can comment, because I will say sometimes there is some very good targeted funding for Maori-owned corporations that isn't in any way, shape or form separatist, racist, call it whatever you want. So sometimes there's some really good
hang
stuff
on,
Stuart.
In this space. If you're targeting it on the ethnicity being Maori, of course it's separatist and racist and apartheid. It can't not be.
No, there's some nuances here that we need to be quite a little bit careful about.
What are they? What are the nuances?
Well, there's a whole lot of statistics out there around enabling Maori businesses, allowing them to get off the ground.
Well, we enable them by giving them a tax rate of 17%, not 28%. What more do they want?
No, that's not true for Maori businesses. That's true for Maori trusts, not Maori businesses. But again, I'd have to have a look at this to see the basis for it. I'm not saying...
So you're not against a little bit of apartheid if the statistics are right, Stuart?
No, it's. I wouldn't call it apartheid in any way, shape, or form.
Chris
Sean,
Lynch, do you think it sounds like Māorification, a special Maori investment fund?
Well, of course it is. And what has become abundantly clear, particularly when Labour was in power, what I always thought was quite funny is I'd obviously get quite a few press releases from up-and-coming businesses or startups or companies. They would, in order to get their funding from the government, they would just try to navigate their way by calling their company a Māori name, or perhaps they had one person who may have dabbled in Te Reo over 5 years ago, and they get millions of dollars from the government just because it felt like tokenism, and look, and people will say this is racist, but at the end of the day, who's Māori? Really, honestly, how do you prove that your business is set up to benefit everybody, other than Māori?
Well, this document talks about the Maori economy. Stuart, I haven't seen a separate Maori currency. What is the Maori economy?
The Maori economy is the assets and the services that are owned by different iwi. It is huge. I mean,
is it a separate economy, Stuart?
No,
or is that some weird academic construct?
Oh no, it's a way we characterise things. Let me give an example. Ngāi Tahu and Tainui are two very good examples of iwi who have taken their settlement money and grown it in a way that has actually enabled and empowered not only their own iwi but the regions within which they live. This is what we call the Maori economy. It is assets owned by iwi, and they are doing a fantastic job. So actually this $10 million, when I think about it, could be a fund to help people invest.
But it's not a separate economy, Stuart.
No, but neither is manufacturing. Now, manufacturing is part of the general economy.
That's called a sector, not an economy.
You could call it, look, there are ways that is helpful to identify how our economy runs. Talking about
there are
Maori
ways
economy,
that are incredibly separatist, right, Chris Lynch, and unhelpful.
Well,
but I don't think this is one of those ways. I really don't.
I can't believe I'm about to quote the spin-off here, but the Māori economy has surpassed, and it's estimated, to be $100 billion forecast for 2030, and yet we're still giving more so-called money to the so-called Māori economy because it needs a bit of a helping hand.
That's not true, Chris. Absolutely. I'm going to push back on that.
Of course, you only have to look at the likes of Māori trusts and collectors. If you have a nice wee koro on the top right of your website and all that sort of stuff, you'll get a lot of funding. But I think people can start to see through that and for what it is. Having said that, there are plenty of decent Māori companies that do reasonably well, and Ngāi Tahu, of course, and iwi here in Christchurch has done a fantastic job with their tourism ventures, and they've bounced back incredibly well even after the pandemic. But I'd like to see more grassroots Māori and see how they're getting on, because there seems to be a lot of grassroots community groups in this city that tend to be really struggling, very much so. And I'm just not sure where that Ngāi Tahu tourism funding's going, but it's certainly not going to
well,
be.
as I said, Stuart and Chris, I said Ruth Tipu, who picked up the flag from the Suter Art Gallery, I'm pretty sure not a single dollar of the benefits to the Maori economy from this $10 million MB fund, I'm sure none of it is going to find its way into her weekly budget as she raises her kids as a solo mum.
That is true, but you may well find that some of the Ngāi Tahu money does find its way to Ruth if she has kids that need scholarships to university or et cetera, et cetera.
Fair point.
So that's true. Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to take a break. Stuart, you're doing very well with your standard of language so far. Time for a break.